Welcome to the New Thinking for a New World podcast, where we explore the most pressing issues that are challenging and changing our societies. We are looking for new thinking and new solutions wherever we can find them. Listen as host Alan Stoga, the Talberg Foundation's chairman, challenges his guests for analysis, ideas and actions. Together, we can help make our world at least a bit better.
In August 1968, American anti-war protesters chanted, "The whole world is watching." What might have been hyperbole then is fact now. The whole world is watching Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or as the Russian government would have it, the Russian special operation in Ukraine. Except for audiences in Russia itself, that is, where there is very little actual reporting of what is happening in Ukraine that doesn't mesh with the government's narrative about the war, the special operation. Among the thousands of Russians reportedly fleeing their country are many scores of Russia's best journalists. One who has not is Yevgenia Albats, investigative journalist, political scientist, author, and radio host. Welcome, Yevgenia, and thank you for joining this episode of New Thinking for a New World.
Alan, thank you very much for having me, but just let me correct you from start. Whoever was preparing you for this podcast didn't do homework. So I used to be a radio host at Echo Moscow. I've been running, it's the freewheeling broadcasting in Moscow. And I was doing my show for 19 consecutive years. However, it was shut down 2 weeks ago. I also editor-in-chief of the Moscow-based political portal, The New Times, which also was blocked by the Russian government. Therefore, we work now only under virtual private network, VPN. So I moved my show to my YouTube channel. And I run this show on my YouTube, but of course, I lost the audience of more than 1 million people that we had at Echo Moscow.
To that point, Russians and Americans, Russians and other Europeans are mostly cut off from each other. That's the fact that we're having this conversation is itself almost a miracle, and I thank you for that. Why is it so important to you to keep talking?
It is my job, Alan. If you don't know, I've been doing journalism for the last 45 years of my life. And that's what I do. To be honest with you, I would prefer teaching, but I'm banned from teaching in Moscow. No university is hiring me to teach. I used to teach institutional theory, political regimes, fear of bureaucracy. Unfortunately, I'm banned from teaching here. So that's, I share my life between two things. I'm a journalist and I'm an academic. And unfortunately, no longer any of this is possible in my home country.
As you've just said, you were a journalist during Soviet times when repression was severe. How does this compare to that experience?
One cannot compare the kind of censorship that existed in the Soviet Union to the one existed now. Of course, the Soviet Union was a totalitarian state, had an ideology, and everything was supposed to be in line with the ideology all the way until 1988, when censorship was officially abandoned. And then we had the freest journalism ever existed in this country. Nowadays, a lot of publications and independent portals and each and every independent or freewheeling electronic media shut down. That's all happened after the war started on February the 24th. And they also passed repressive laws in accordance with which one can get 15 years in jail just to say that Montana House in Mariupol was bombed, or to say that, Russian army lost at least 7,000 troops since Minister of Defense reported just once to the Russian public, and these once happened on March the 2nd, and no information since. So there are all kinds of repressive laws. We yet to understand how they're going to work. And basically, therefore, some 160 reporters and editors left Russia. It's not clear how we can operate here. And basically, we're just testing waters. We're trying to figure out how far we can get. So my lawyers tell me, first, they're supposed to initiate an administrative case. If they initiate an administrative case against you, then you have 2 weeks to escape from Russia. Otherwise, you go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. I'm not sure I'm going to survive in jail. So I would probably try to catch the last train.
You wrote recently that a friend had told you were about to be arrested, and you packed a bag and had it by the door, and then nothing happened. What is it like to operate with that sort of Damocles hanging over your head?
Listen, police comes to my apartment every so often. And I keep telling them that when they will have a court order, then I will let them in. Listen, it's part of life. It is part of life. By the way, I should say that political journalism anywhere in the world is a risky business. People get killed, people die in different countries across the globe, not just, in my part of the world. So it's a risky business from start. So it was my choice, and it is my choice. That's first. Second, I'm no martyr. I'm not going to be a martyr. I just hate to be told what to do, to be honest with you. I just hate this. I don't understand. I'm a 63-year-old. I have a PhD from Harvard University. I am a very experienced journalist. And all of a sudden, these bastards, for one, they start the war, they destroy 2 countries, they kill innocent people in Ukraine, they destroy cities in Ukraine. I know Ukraine very well. My grandparents were from the western part of Ukraine. I traveled all around there. I know these places. And so, I'm very, very angry. And I think that, and no one asked me, I'm a Russian citizen, I'm a taxpayer here in this country, and basically they use my taxpayers' money to send troops to the neighboring country and kill people. It makes me very angry, Ellen. But it's what comes with political journalism. You always, this way or another, you're risking, a couple of things, but it's very interesting.
What's the mood in Moscow? What are people talking about?
Oh, very depressed. Very, very depressed. Moscow is the wealthiest city in Russia. It used to be, or it's still, a very comfortable European-like city with lots of very good restaurants and pubs and theaters and music halls. And, that's the country, in Moscow, people were making twice what people make on average across the country. And obviously, Moscow was enjoying all, the luxuries of this market economy and exposure to the West, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result, when the war started, people were so frightened. There was especially young people, especially those who never really lived under Soviets. For them, it was the most difficult part. And they ran to grab a ticket because they thought that Putin was going to close borders and they were going to get locked inside Russia. And so not just journalists, but, some 250,000 left Moscow in the matter of a couple of weeks. Those with money business people, they flew to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, to Emirates. Some flew to Israel. Those without money, with little means, flew to Yerevan, Georgia, in the Caucasus, to Astana, capital of Kazakhstan, to Uzbekistan, to Ulaanbaatar, you name it. So people were just running. And to be honest with you, I feel bad about that. Because after all, our readers and our listeners and our viewers, they don't have this lovely option to run. They don't have money, they don't have visas, they don't have second passports. So, and it so happened that people who represent these liberal democratic values, they just run out. So people in Moscow, they write to me, "Oh, Yevgenia, thank you so much that you are with us. Yevgenia, please don't leave us. Yevgenia." And, on the one hand, I do understand that I don't want to go to jail. And I'm not ready to go to jail just because a month ago I had a knee replacement surgery, and with this kind of knee, it's going to be very hard in any prison, in any penal colony. But also I feel ashamed because we left our sort of constituency, We just told them, guys, thank you. It was lovely spending some years with you, but now when it's dangerous, we will leave you here and off we go for a more decent, more safe, more comfortable life. So I feel quite ambiguous, Alan, because, and of course, my lovely Czechists, they're so happy, They didn't have to do anything. They just passed a couple of repressive laws. They made a couple of, frightening statements, and liberals immediately, got on their knees and said, "Oh, wait, please don't touch us. We just go. Just let us go."
Let me ask. There was recently reported a mass rally in Luzhniki Stadium where Putin addressed the audience and defended the war, the special operation, as defending Christian values, even quoted from the Bible, all of which seems surreal to me watching from a distance many thousands of miles away. How do people there, how do Russians view that kind of event? Is surreal the right word?
It's not the first time that Putin runs this type of rallies. In fact, for those of you who remember Olympia by Leni Riefenstahl, the documentary that was shot during the first years of Nazi in power in 1936, yeah. So these kind of rallies, they're very well known in this type of the regimes, in dictatorships. They love to have, to see this support of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Now, of those 400,000 who were gathered in Luzhniki, and once again, it's not the first time we have had the rally of this sort, I think at least 2/3, they were forced to come. Each and every enterprise in Moscow, each and every university in Moscow, or each and every school in Moscow was given a quota. They have to get that amount of people to the rally. Then there were buses which were a couple of kilometers from the place. People were supposed to come to the designated places. Some of them were paid, some of them were not paid. They were just, at the expense of losing their jobs. They came, and so they were taken to the rally. Now, if you watch it to the end, you might have noticed that Putin was booed at the end, and that's why the transmission of the rally was cut off. So, but having said that, I think that probably 50-50, 50% of Russians do support this war as of now, and 50% are against it. We see that there is a clear-cut demographic divide. Those young and well-educated, they tend to be against the war. Those who depend upon the state, people who live on retirement compensation, which they receive from the state or live out of the state budget, people with much less exposure to travel and to life in the West, they support it so far. However, it's too early to say. We're just, there's less than a month of a war, right? It started on the 24th. Right, we're what? So on the 24th of February, so tomorrow will be March 24th, will be a month since the beginning of the war. Sanctions were imposed, and already prices went up. Already there are a hell of a lot of banks got frozen. People are unable to get cash in US dollars or in euros. Medicine went up 20 to 80%. However, the expectation is that Russians in Moscow will feel the pain of sanctions by mid-April, and those who live in big cities, 500,000 and plus, they will feel the real pain of these sanctions by the beginning of summer.
A world under stress needs leaders in every discipline and in every country. Leaders whose work is innovative, courageous, rooted in universal values, and global in approach or implication. If you know someone like that, in your company, in your university, in your community, anywhere, please nominate that person for the Talberg SNF Aliassime Global Leadership Prize. Go to talbergprize.org. That's TALLBERG prize.org.
Let's go back for a second to Riefenstahl and the Nazis. And I'm glad you used that reference. One of the things we hear is President Putin demanding the denazification of Ukraine. Put aside that Zelensky is Jewish, put aside that the Germans were decisively defeated by the Russians in Ukraine in 1944, words are chosen for a purpose. And again, this sounds to Western ears surreal. What sense does denazification make? Who's the audience for that propaganda? Who believes it?
I think that badly educated people who have been exposed to the state propaganda during the last years, they are consumers of those lies. If you look at, Russian propaganda machine, they were talking about, this glory of the Soviet victory in the Great Patriotic War back in the first part of the 1940s. It was, it became the biggest myth. It's not to say that we didn't. Yes. Soviet army was essential in defeating Nazi Germany, along with allies from the United States, United Kingdom, and many others. We lost 27 million people to this war. However, Putin have been using this great victory, this past, in order to sort of to build up on this past and to tell Russians that once we were a great imperial nation and we were capable to defeat the army which conquered the entire Europe. Now, each and every kid in this country knows the word Nazi. If you watch Russian Channel 1 and Russian Channel 2, it's all propaganda, nothing but propaganda. First, they say that Putin started this war because Ukraine was about to invade Russia. That not Ukraine, Ukrainian Nazi and Ukrainian nationals were about to invade Russia. Second, they get a message that Ukrainian nationalists, Ukrainian Nazi, Banderovцы, the followers of Stepan Bandera, who was killed by KGB agents back, 50 years ago, that they are the ones who bombed their cities. You wouldn't believe it, but that's exactly what they say. If you think that we watch CNN and we see that Russian troops bombard Kharkiv, bombard Mariupol, 80% of Mariupol destroyed, the entire center of Kharkiv destroyed, and both cities are Russian-speaking cities. 95% of those who live in Kharkiv, they speak Russian. 89% of those who live in Mariupol, they say that they prefer Russian over Ukrainian. So, but Russian TV, Russian propaganda machine says that it's Ukrainian nationalists and Nazis who destroy their cities. And they keep saying this, that it's not Russian troops. Russian troops are just, Russian missiles. All they do is they destroy Ukrainian nationalist military might. So basically, and I should tell you, I'm stunned. But when you talk to people who have no exposure to any other information but the one on the state propaganda channels, then you get to know that that's exactly, they believe this. They say, Yevgenia, but look, there are these Ukrainian nationalists and Nazis who are destroying their own cities. And then you ask them, wait a second, just make yourself to think. What is the purpose for Ukrainians to destroy their own cities? This is their country. They're going to live there. What's the purpose of destruction of Kharkiv, Mariupol, and etc.? And then people start thinking and ask, oh, really? Really? But what about Nazis? Are there Nazis? I said, as many as you can find in Russia. Each May, on Pushkin Square in Moscow, some idiots celebrate Hitler's birthday. It happens each year. It happens in Moscow, it happens in Voronezh, it happens in St. Peter, etc. So, but unfortunately, people apparently, this propaganda machine, it's very successful in, getting this message through.
Yevgenia, I've got to ask you, you are, as you said, a journalist, an academic. You're one of those rare Russians that have spent a lot of time in the United States. You know the United States. So I have a question. Why has it been so hard for America to figure out Vladimir Putin?
Ellen, I'm afraid that it was hard not just for Americans, but for Europeans either. Because for one, Vladimir Putin looked as a macho man, as a capable man in comparison to the first president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, who was drunk half of the time. Putin was young. He spoke good German. He is well built. He played judo. And he looked as a modern man to many Americans and Europeans. However, the most important thing is that Putin was extremely successful in exporting corruption and greed. He used, being a KGB guy, he turned out to be a great recruiter. I remember, the first time Tony Blair, the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, came to Russia. He was totally fully in love with Putin. George W. Bush younger, he happened to look into Putin's soul and found some soul. Gosh, nobody told George Bush younger that KGB guys are capable to conceal their souls. And in fact, they probably don't have one. But anyway, but look, if you just recently, we got to know much more about that. But anyway, look, the former president of Finland was sitting on the board, I believe, of Gazprom Rosneft, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Austria, the former Chancellor of Germany, the former Prime Minister of France. And so it goes. So Putin was very, very successful in buying out politicians, at least in Europe. He was much less successful with the United States, except that, Trump totally fell in love with him. I don't know why Trump was so prone to Putin, but, time and again, the 45th president of the United States kept saying that, that Putin is a great man and he's a great leader and a great politician. So that's the second reason that Putin was very successful in manipulating people. Unfortunately, you probably know this better than I do, that there is also, Putin was less successful in the United States with buying out politicians. However, Kremlin created so-called Valdai Club. And therefore, a lot of academics and policy experts were invited to meet with Putin and his ministers on a yearly basis. And I wrote about that. And I spoke to these people. They were brought to Moscow on business class tickets, round trip. They were placed in Moscow in the 5-star hotels. Then they were taken to Sochi and were placed in a luxury resorts. Their meals were paid. I don't want to say that Putin bought all of them out. I don't want to say this. But definitely, and trust me, I know what I'm talking about. But some of them were they were telling me, Yevgenia, don't you see that Russia is such an unlawful country? And, Western values have hard time, setting up in Russia. So probably democracy, Russia is not ready for democracy. So you need a strong man. You need somebody who will lead this nation, who will show this nation the path to the true world. So Putin did show. It was clear from the very beginning, trust me. In 1999, it was 100% clear that it wasn't just one KGB man who was coming into power. It was the corporation which was coming into power. It was dead clear back then. But, it was amazing. I was arguing here in Moscow with academics and with, rich people and with everyone, who were telling me, yes, Yevgenia, we need Russian Pinochet. And then I was coming to the United States and I was telling, Yevgenia, you're writing about KGB your entire life. You have a bias. I said, I have a knowledge. Trust me. In 2008, Alan, I prepared a report, which was called Putin's Silent Coup. I showed in 2008 how the KGB brats took all the major resources of the country. They took over 10 state-owned corporations. They got under their control oil, gas, telecommunications, inflow and outflow, or money inflow and outflow. They took under their control all industrial production, all military production, and etc. And I did this. I first presented this, I believe, in Chapman House in London. And I was told, "Oh, Yevgenia, you're so biased." And then I kept talking and talking, and I was showing, I was picking up, I was making lists. I saw that, that the members of the corporation, they were taking positions of the deputy heads of different agencies. That's exactly the way it worked in the Soviet Union. Only in the Soviet Union, there was Central Committee of the Communist Party, which was, of course, not a party, but the form of governance, which at least competed with the KGB for information. Information was the biggest commodity in the Soviet times. So competed with information, and for nothing else. But guys from the party, they were dead afraid of KGB because they remember what their predecessors, NKVD, did to their predecessors, how many people got killed when basically Czechs were in power in the country under Stalin. So, and I kept making these reports in different institutions in the United States. At my, I'm a graduate of Harvard University. I did a couple of talks there and at Yale University. And everywhere, people were saying, "Yevgenia, are you sure? After all, George Bush Sr., before he became a president, he was the CIA chief." And I kept saying, "Wait a second. KGB comprised, KGB was in charge of the functions which in the United States were fulfilled by 28 different agencies. Nowadays, it's 17 different agencies. Listen, but you have the system of check and balances. You have appropriation committees in the Congress. Before anyone gets money, there is all kind of checks. You have independent judiciary. You have the system of the Supreme Court. Your Supreme Court is just my most beloved institution in the United States because obviously Warner Court was capable to get rid of cruel laws and segregation in the South. You have this whole system that doesn't allow for one corporation to take over. So anyway, but unfortunately, that's the problem. That's a huge problem that unfortunately a lot of people in expert community and in academic community in the United States, they tend to believe in their own hypotheses. I remember in 2017, I gave a talk at Davis Center for Russian Studies at Harvard University, and I'm alumni of this center and that university. Professor Timothy Colton, who was my dissertation advisor while I was doing my PhD in political science at Harvard, he introduced me as saying, back in 1994, Yevgenia Albats came to the center and she gave a talk. And the major message of her talk was, unless KGB was destroyed in Russia, Czechs were going to take over sooner or later. And I listened to her, Colton said, and thought, it's not going to happen. She's so wrong. She just doesn't understand. She just doesn't take it. It's never going to happen. And now, said Colton, I should say that she was right and I was wrong. And it was very nice to hear this, but I was ready to cry, Alan, because I didn't want to be right. I don't want to be right. I don't want to live in the country which are run by these bastards. Putin, in a matter of 1 month, Putin destroyed 2 countries, not just one, 2 countries. And of course, in Ukraine, thousands and thousands of people killed. 141 child killed. You cannot live with this. And on top of everything now, I have to carry this awful sense of guilt.
So let me end by asking a question. If you were to meet with President Biden or President Macron or Chancellor Scholz, what would you ask them as a journalist, as a citizen of Russia?
I'm not sure I want to meet them. You see, it's a huge problem, Alan, because I want to be loyal to my flag. I hate this government. I never voted for Putin. I think that people who started the war, they're wartime criminals. But I love this country. I love people who speak Russian. I love them speaking Russian around me. And I do want to be loyal to my flag. Because otherwise, I would tell President Biden or Chancellor Scholz, I would tell them, by buying Russian oil and gas, you finance this war. Stop doing that. But I can't say this because that means that my fellow citizens, they are going to suffer tremendously. And it's hard. Besides that, it's a criminal case to ask for sanctions against Russian Federation. So that's my answer to you.
Yevgenia, thank you very much for this conversation, and far more importantly, for what you are trying to do, for trying to keep the conversation going inside your own country. You are a Russian patriot, and I can't imagine anything that is more needed in Russia now than exactly that, a Russian patriot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Please rate our show on Apple Podcast and subscribe. Meanwhile, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter at tallbergfoundation.org to learn more about our work. That's TALLBERG foundation.org. Thank you, and we'll be back again next week for another episode of Tallberg's New Thinking for a New World. This podcast was brought to you through the generous support of SNF, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation.